So it's the last night here at beautiful Kehila Centre. Last night for now. I'll be back. But, we've been here now 2 years straight, biweekly, every other Wednesday. And really, it started even before. It started right before COVID. We did that series of Torah and science classes, and then pandemic happened, and then we did some Zoom classes, then there was country shul for a bit, and then we've been here consistently for 2 years. So it's been, an amazing journey, and I want to thank all of you for being a part of it and for coming and showing up. And, it's easier to watch at home on YouTube, in your pajamas, and you get the nice polished, edited product with all the graphics and images and things. So I know it takes effort to come out. So thank you, because without you coming here, it wouldn't be possible, and all the thousands of people around the world wouldn't be able to benefit from this circle. So thank you for coming. And also thank you to Rabbi Kadosh. He's not here, but he's been so gracious and hosting us. And not just hosting, but I have to give him a personal thank you to Rav Kadosh, because he also came to my defense many times when there were critics and haters that wanted to shut it down. So also grateful for that there are people who care about truth, care about emet, who care about true Torah, real Torah. And so we got to be grateful to Rav Kadosh and to Jimmy, the president, who did a lot of things behind the scenes and has always supported, and also to Mike and to Ruben. I want to say thank you to them, because they actually arranged. They did a lot of the early work in making this happen and arranging these classes and the support. And so thank you to you guys. It wouldn't be possible without you. Also Jack. Thank you, Jack, for building this place. Without you building it, we wouldn't be here. So you produced a beacon of light for Toronto and for Canada and for Sephardic Jews everywhere. It's not just the local Kehila Centre. Now it's the global Kehila Centre. So there's literally hundreds of thousands of people watching from all over the world. And again, thank you to all of you, because as a very famous saying that our sages said, Rabbi Hanina said, "Harbe lamati mirabotai," right? I learned a lot from my teachers, from my rabbis, umechaverai yoter mirabotai, and I learned more from my colleagues and my friends more than my teachers. But the most, umitalmidai yoter mikulan, right? The most you learn from your audience, actually. So you come here to learn, and I also come here to learn, and we're learning from each other. So for the last night, I thought a lot about what are we going to do for the final class. A lot of different ideas. And on the one hand, I want to summarize a lot of what we've said over the last few years and bring out some conclusions and things that I think are important to remember, never to forget. And I'll be referencing a lot of shiurim. I'll say, remember we talked about this then, and we talked about this then. And I think it's going to be like a synthesis of all the classes from the last 2 to 5 years, bringing it all together. Because they were all part of one thread, really. There was one underlying thread to all of the shiurim. And what do you think that is, if you were to guess? Before I tell you, what would you say is the common theme throughout all these classes? What was the common theme? Redemption. Yeah, I think that's it. It was redemption is Geula, right? The whole idea was, how do we bring Geula? What can we do to hasten, to accelerate, to make it happen, to finish it? We're already in the process. We've been in the process of Geula for a long time. We're at the finish line. And what can we do to cross the finish line? So the goal has always been bringing Geula and shifting from a Galut mindset to a Geula mindset. Shedding the old Galut mentality of exile and oppression and transitioning to the Geula mindset of liberty. Remember, the Torah was Charut ala luchot. The Torah says it was engraved. The 10 Commandments were engraved on the tablets. And our sages said, don't read it as charut, read it as cherut, liberty. That really the whole purpose of Torah is to liberate. God took Israel out of Egypt. I took you out of slavery so that you shouldn't be slaves, so that you should never be subjugated again. So the goal of the Torah always has been and should be liberty, personal, spiritual, mental, emotional liberation of living like a free human being, where the universe is your playground, and not to feel constrained and constricted and overwhelmed and anxious and depressed and tired and miserable. That's the opposite of what God wants from us, right? God says, I give you life and death. Choose life, right? I put before you life and death. Remember in Sefer Dvarim, which we start reading this week, at the end, Moshe's final speech that he gave in his final 30 seconds. Hey, I guess that's appropriate. So Moshe's, we start reading this week, Moshe's final speech, Sefer Dvarim, right? Deuteronomy is the final word, the final testament of Moshe in his last 37 days before passing away. And I'll quote from it again later. And Moshe quotes God as saying, God has given you life and death, good and evil, life and death. Choose the life. Point is, we've always been focused on how do we bring Geula. And in recent weeks, many people have asked, okay, so where are we in the Geula process, right? So for the past several years, we've been speaking about this Mashiach timeline that I first suggested a couple of years ago, the Star of Jacob prophecy, Kochav Yaakov, right, from Bilam's prophecy, Darach Kochav Yaakov. So where are we in that process? Where are we holding? People are saying, you haven't talked about it in a while. Like, what's going on? Give us some current affairs, some geopolitics. Are we still on schedule? So we're going to start with a quick recap, because it's been a while since we spoke about it. Quick recap of the prophecies and how they've been fulfilled, with more details that have come to light. And then we'll get into a lot of new things. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the high holidays, because we're now less than 2 months away from Rosh Hashanah. So we're getting close to Judgment Day. We're getting close to a new year. And so we want to prepare for that spiritually, emotionally, mentally, get ready for Judgment Day, and conclude with one last call to action. So recap. Back in December 2023, we did that first class on the Kochav Yaakov, the Star of Jacob. The astronomers had discovered a new comet heading our way, and it was predicted to become visible to the naked eye on the 27th of September 2024, which when I pulled out my calendar was the 25th of Elul, and then I just remembered the Zohar prophecy, again, on Parashat Balak. The Zohar explains Bilam's prophecy of Darach Kochav Yaakov, that a star emerges from Jacob, and that's the star that the symbol, the harbinger of Mashiach's arrival, that symbolizes the forthcoming messianic age. And if you remember, the Zohar says that it would happen on a Friday, on the 25th of Elul, and the star will be visible in the night sky, and it will be in the night sky for 70 days. And by the last summer, the summer of 2024, people were saying, this comet maybe it's burning out, maybe it won't be visible. But it did happen on September 27th. As predicted, it appeared. You could have seen it visible to the naked eye. I saw it from my backyard. And more amazingly, of course, the Zohar says that when that star appears, you will see that a big enemy of Israel, one of the oppressors of Israel, will be killed, and 3 buildings will fall, and a great palace, Arizal Rav Rava, will fall with it. And of course, that's exactly what happened on that Friday. If you remember, we got news that Nasrallah was assassinated, and he was hiding under 3 buildings in his Hezbollah headquarters, this huge underground compound that was under 3 buildings. And mamash, just like the Zohar prophecy said, the 3 buildings fell, the great edifice underground was destroyed. This tormentor of Israel, who's been launching terrorist attacks and funding terrorism against Israel for decades, for like 3 decades, was eliminated. And it happened just as the star, or this new comet, was appearing in the night sky. So that prophecy came about just exactly like we had hoped, pretty much. And then at the end of that, we covered all of that in the class that I called Lebanon and Iran in the End of Days. And at that point, I suggested, the next thing in the prophecy is, the Zohar says, 70 days later, when the star is no longer visible, when the star is now gone, then you should expect an earthquake around Jerusalem. That's what an earthquake 45 miles around Jerusalem. And actually on that day, first of all, an actual earthquake did happen. So we didn't know it at the time, but a friend, somebody named Keter in the Golan Heights, who actually tracks earthquakes, pointed out to me that there actually were 2 earthquakes around Jerusalem on December 5th. Small earthquakes. They were magnitude 2 and 2.2 on the Richter scale. Small earthquakes, magnitude 2. And so there literally were 2 little earthquakes, but that wasn't the big earthquake that happened that week, because the big earthquake that happened was we got news that the Assad regime was falling. And this new guys, Jolani and his group, were taking over. And within 3 days, on December 8th, Assad had fled to Moscow, and the Assad regime collapsed, and it completely changed the face of the region. And it was described in a lot of the news media as a seismic event, as a massive geopolitical earthquake. And it really was 45 miles away from Jerusalem, or just about, so not too far away, and completely reshaped the face of the Middle East in many different ways. And of course, the war that Israel just had with Iran, and finally taking out most of their nuclear capabilities, would not have happened without the fall of Assad's regime. Because in the aftermath of that, Israel secured their military position around Syria and took control of the skies over Syria. And without having complete air superiority over Syria, they wouldn't be able to strike Iran properly. So it's all part of the sequence. It was totally necessary. That was very vital, very important event. And Israel also took Mount Hermon, which is strategically super important, militarily very important, but also, we said, spiritually very important. If you remember in our class on the Bnei Elohim and the Anunnaki, right? The books of Enoch and various other mystical texts say that the Bnei Elohim descended on Mount Hermon. It was called Hermon because that's where they took a vow. They made a cherem to do whatever it is that they did. So this is spiritually also a very important place, and a stargate, and the fact that Israel was able to take Mount Hermon spiritually is an important sign as well. So that happened in that first week of December, that massive geopolitical earthquake. So the Zohar was fulfilled pretty nicely. And then the Zohar says after this earthquake, a cave will be revealed in Jerusalem and a fire would emerge from the cave. And then at some point later it says Mashiach would come. So is it a literal fire? Is Mashiach supposed to be like symbolically that fire? Subject to interpretation. But again, we did see in the spring wildfires emerge all around Jerusalem. So the Zohar is saying you should expect to see from Jerusalem fires emerge. And that's actually what happened. These were the worst wildfires in Israeli history. Again, we saw actual literal fires tragically engulf all of Jerusalem. So even that, you could say, perhaps is a fulfillment of the Zohar prophecy. So that's where we're holding now. We've basically, that whole passage, everything has been fulfilled, from the comet to the death of the oppressor, to the buildings, to the earthquakes, to the fires. It's all happened. So it's only just that one last line that we need, which is, where's Mashiach? Right? Where's Mashiach? A lot of people are claiming to be, but remember the general rule. Anybody who claims they are Mashiach probably isn't. Okay.
Didn't you say that Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come and tell us?
Right. We don't need to jump the gun and say, Eliyahu will come. That's his whole job. Why are people taking Eliyahu's job away from him? Right? Let Eliyahu do his job. So let's not jump ahead and think, there are various charismatic people out there and also various cult leaders out there who can brainwash others to believe that they are the Messiah. But to claim that anybody is Mashiach before Mashiach has done what he needs to do is premature and foolish. And it's worth remembering what the Rambam says. How do we know who is Mashiach? How do we know? Im yamod melech mibeit David hogeh b'Torah. You need a king, somebody who is a direct descendant of King David. That already eliminates many, many people. And hogeh b'Torah, and he has to know Torah on all 4 levels. Pshat, remez, drash, sod, right? Not just picking and choosing what part of Torah you want. Ve'osek b'mitzvot keDavid aviv, and to be fulfilling the mitzvahs fully, to be fully Torah observant, like David, his forefather, his ancestor. Kfi Torah shebechtav v'shebe'al peh, both written and oral Torah, of course. V'yachov kol Yisrael elech ba, and inspires other people and pushes even other people, other Jews, to also want to take up Torah learning and Torah and mitzvah observance, and to strengthen them, lechazek, to give people a chizuk in Torah, ve'ilachem milchamot Hashem, and fight the wars of God. Such a person is the presumptive. We might think, we can suspect, maybe, okay, this guy is a potential. Remember, we have this idea of there being a potential Mashiach in every generation. Okay, maybe, possible. But only only if he builds the actual temple in its place. That's a big one. The kibetz nidchei Israel, and gathered all of Israel back to their land. Areze Mashiach bevadai. You only know when somebody's Mashiach for sure if he fulfills these basic prophecies in Tanakh. Rebuilding the temple, that's basic. That's Ezekiel chapter 37 through 40. Ezekiel 37 describes Mashiach coming. King David will come. A descendant of David will come, reestablish the Davidic dynasty, reunify all the tribes, all the various houses of Israel, Judah, Yehuda, Ephraim, bring them back, graft the branches together, and then, of course, fight the wars. Then it's Gog and Magog, chapter 38, 39, and then Yechezkel in chapter 40 and onward outlines the final temple. So it's all part of one sequence. So a Mashiach that didn't do these things, you've just erased Yechezkel, you've erased Tanakh. So if a Mashiach doesn't build the temple in its place with those dimensions that Yechezkel clearly outlines, after having fought Gog and Magog, like all these things are necessary, and bringing, like it says in chapter 37, all the Israelites back, or at least let's say the majority of Jews back to the Holy Land, that's all 100% necessary. Only such a person who has fulfilled this is Mashiach bevadai. Until then, it's people who are pretenders only, pretenders at best, and oftentimes completely ineligible and just starting cult followings. And ultimately Mashiach has to bring the whole world to serve Hashem. It's a verse in Tzefania that the whole world will have one clear language, a safa brura, likro kulam b'shem Hashem, to call in God's name, uleovdo shchem echad, and to serve God with one shoulder. Only when this happens will know Mashiach comes. Until then, no. Ve'im lo itzliach, if he didn't fulfill all these things, or ne'erag, or if he's killed, or even dies really, but he uses ne'erag. We talked about this in the series on Mashiach ben Yosef. The Rambam uses the term ne'erag because it's based on the language in Masechet Sukkah there. So if he dies or is killed, we know for sure, for sure this isn't the person who is the Messiah.
What do we know about Eliyahu? How is he a human being? Is he
Presumably, Eliyahu went up in a chariot. He'll come back in a chariot. I think that's the simple understanding. That's what Malachi says, that God says, I'll send you Eliyahu back before the great judgment day, which I'm going to get to. God took Eliyahu, he'll send him back. It has to be, the coming of Eliyahu has to be in a miraculous fashion, because otherwise you have the same problem with Eliyahu as you have with Mashiach, which is, who is Eliyahu? Like if I come now and say, I'm Eliyahu, well, prove it.
What about the said Eliyahu is in every Brit Milah?
Yeah, we say it's like the point of it is that Eliyahu became an angel, so he could like be flying around and coming and visiting every Brit Milah. Yeah, because he turned into an angel. But he has to come in such a way that everybody recognizes him as Eliyahu. Otherwise, anybody can claim to be. And just to touch on the Christian argument, because some will say that John the Baptist was Eliyahu. Because if Jesus is the Messiah, then who was his Eliyahu? So they'll say, well, John the Baptist was the Eliyahu of his generation. But funny enough, in the New Testament itself, it says that the Jews asked John the Baptist, are you Eliyahu? And he said, no. So he himself denies being Eliyahu, and yet also other versions will claim that he served as Eliyahu and he baptized Jesus and whatever. I mean, we don't need Eliyahu to baptize the Messiah. That's pointless. We need Eliyahu to anoint the Messiah. That's not the same. Anoint with oil. And so Eliyahu's arrival itself has to be miraculous. And that's what Malachi really is describing. Malachi is that God is saying, I will send Eliyahu before the great judgment day, and it'll be clear who he is. So none of that's happened yet. So it would be premature to call anybody Mashiach now. So it's very, very important not to fall to whatever it is, the propaganda, or to any cults, whatever they might be. Avoid it, stay away from it. And if anybody's claiming to be Mashiach, stay as far away from that person or the people around them, as far away as possible. Nothing good will come out of that. So that's just to summarize where we are, what we talked about. And also one more prophecy. We talked about the Star of Jacob prophecy, and there's one more, which is even older, which is found in a few Midrashim and in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, about the final 7-year cycle before Mashiach comes. We talked about that as well. I first spoke about it back in 2021, and that was a Zoom class because of the pandemic. It was during a lockdown. So back then I already suggested a 7-year thing based on what that prophecy is saying, that in the first year there's going to be strange weather and strange rain patterns, okay? But then the second year it says the arrows of some global catastrophe will be launched. And then in the third year there will be a global catastrophe that'll impact the entire planet. And it says Ra'av, it says famine, but there are other Midrashim that say that it's going to be a devel, a plague. And so at the time in 2021, I was saying that it looks like we're here. This is the first time where the entire world is affected. There were great plagues in the past, but never that impacted literally everybody on the planet and kind of like simultaneously. It was never possible in history to coordinate such a pandemic lockdown for obvious reasons. And this was the first time in history that you had a coordinated global WHO, UN-imposed lockdown on the planet. And so that seemed to fit in very well with what our sages said 2,000 years ago, a global dever that will impact every single person on the planet in some way. So that would have been like the third year. And so then I filled in year 4, 5, 6, 7. We should expect, it says in the 6th year you will see sounds of war, and then the 7th year there will be great war. And then after that Mashiach will come. And again, I suggested that in 2021. And it happened exactly. Right? First we had the Russia-Ukraine war that started. And then October 7 with this other, really two global, in a way, two wars that were intertwined. And we spoke about that before, like Russia's influence in October 7. And remember, this is already a global conflict. Like the Russia-Ukraine war is really NATO-Russia war. It's like NATO against Russia, China, and Iran. China and Iran are supporting Russia. And then you have all of NATO supporting Ukraine. And then you have Israel, who's fighting on 7 fronts. It's got Lebanon and Syria and Iran and the Houthis for some reason. You got Yemen there. They've got their own problems. I don't know why. But then you have on all fronts, Gaza. So it's already like a global war. And so all of that actually seemed to happen. That 7-year prophecy seemed to play out. And so now we're here, where 2025 was the end of that. And we should expect to see Mashiach now. So 5784 was the 7th year of that cycle. And now we're in 5785. And so at the beginning of 2025, I was suggesting that this year would be, God willing, the year. And we talked about it being the year of the snake. We spoke about the Chinese zodiac before and the connection between Sin, China, and Sinai, and the significance of the Chinese zodiac and the year of the snake, this year being the year of the snake, and the snake as a symbol of Mashiach. Remember, Mashiach Gematria Nachash. The numerical value of Mashiach is Nachash, symbolized by the snake, like Moshe, whose staff turned into a snake and who later built the copper snake, the healing snake, all this snake imagery that we also spoke about before. And we're in the year of the snake. So what happens if this year ends, 2025 ends, 5785 ends, and nothing happens? So is everything, where all these prophecies came true so pretty much perfectly, what happens if there's no Mashiach? What if we don't see miracles? People are asking me, so what, are you nervous? We only have a few months left. It's coming to an end, 5785 is almost over. We got less than 2 months. And then 2025 is almost over, a few months after that. And then the year of the snake ends on February 15th. I got time. February 15th?
Yeah.
There you go. February 16 is the next year. What's the next year? What follows the snake? Who knows? Yaakov Avinu spoke about it. The horse, good. The snake, the horse follows the snake. Why did I say Yaakov Avinu talks about it?
Done.
The fighting of
Done.
wars.
Right, and this blessing, when Yaakov before he passed away, he gave the bracha to his kids, and he said, I'm going to tell you what will happen b'acharit hayamim, in the end of days. But then he doesn't seem to say anything about the end of days, but it's all encoded there. And to Dan, he says, Dan yadinamo ke'achat shiftei Israel, Dan will judge the people. That's an allusion to Judgment Day. We're going to talk a lot about Judgment Day, so keep that in mind. This is about Judgment Day. Dan yadinamo. Dan means judge. The judge will judge his people. And Yehi Dan Nachash alai derech. Let Dan be a Nachash on the road. Shfifon alai orach, a viper on the path. Hanoshech ikvei sus, who bites the heels of the horse. Veipol rochvo achor. And then the rider falls back. And then Yaakov ends it by saying, Li yishuatcha kiviti Hashem. I await your salvation. What does that have to do with anything? Dan is going to be the snake. He bites the horse. I pray for your salvation. So obviously all the commentaries say this. Rashi says as the Midrash that he foresaw Shimshon, who came from the tribe of Dan, and Shimshon should have been Mashiach, but he didn't make it. He got close. He was the potential Mashiach of his generation. Becheskat Mashiach, but not Bevadai Mashiach. But he failed. And then Yaakov said, another one bites the dust. And Li'ishotcha kiviti Hashem, I await for your salvation. But everybody understood this verse, this blessing to Dan, as talking about Mashiach, about the final salvation, about Judgment Day, Dan Yadinamo, when the nations, all the nations will be judged. Israel and the nations will be judged. So that's like an allusion to the snake, perhaps, the snake horse on the Chinese zodiac calendar, which has significance. And also, you remember each animal on the zodiac has an element that it's linked to, and there's only two that are fire elements, and that's the snake and the horse. So we're in this fire time. Snake, horse are the two fixed. Their fixed sign is fire. So, will we see Geulah in the next coming months, and what if we don't? That's the question. What's coming next? 3 things. So I want to focus on 3. So that was an introduction. Okay. Now we're ready to start the class. All right. That was the recap. That was the summary. That was the intro. It's going to be long because, it's the last time. So it's like Rosh Hashanah where they say it's one Yom HaArichta. It's 2 days, but it's like one long day. So this is going to be like 2 classes, but it's going to be like one long class. So 3 things to keep in mind with Geulah. Number 1. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Okay? That's number 1. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's going to happen. Okay? If Torah promises that it's going to happen, Hashem promises that it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's not like we're awaiting the Geulah, we're already in the Geulah. Right? We're already deep in the process. It started a long time ago. Remember, quoted this many times. The Gemara says, Ein ketz meguleh mizeh. What is the greatest sign of the redemption? The fruits. That Israel flourishes yet again and once more gives fruit to its people and to the whole world, really. When in history were you able to go to your local supermarket and get Israeli produce? Never. That's never happened until recent decades, where you can go to any supermarket here, wherever, and get Israeli pomegranates, grapefruits, whatever, figs, dates. That is the greatest fulfillment of prophecy, and the Gemara said this already almost 2,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. Ein ketz meguleh mizeh. If you want to know if you're in the Geulah, can you get Israeli produce at your local supermarket? Good, you're in Geulah. End of story. So we're already in Geulah. We're not awaiting it, we're in it. So we're just getting closer to the finish line. But again, all these prophecies have already come true. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Israel is now flourishing. It exists. It's prospering. It's strong. Amazing. And actually, Ruben sent me yesterday this clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson. There was a clip going around of Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that there's only 2 borders you can see from outer space. Right? One is the border between North and South Korea, because South Korea is all bright and illuminated and North Korea is dark. And the only other border you can see from space is Israel and its neighbors, because Israel is green and it's surrounded by desert. So you can see Israel very clearly from outer space because it's green, right? And it's been made green in the last 100 years by Jews, by Zionists, by the dreaded evil Zionists, who came and planted over 500 million trees. Literally, look up the JNF and all the aliyot from over 100 years ago, over the past 100 or so years, Israel's planted over 400 million, something like 500 million trees. And of course the greenhouses and the drip irrigation, and made the deserts bloom. The place was completely barren and dead and dry. And many people that visited in the 1800s said so. Mark Twain wrote about it. He said it was completely dead and dry. We don't see anything. We don't see a single human. All the trees are dead. It's just dead shrubs. He said he's never seen a land more cursed than Israel. Mark Twain said this. He's not some Jewish propaganda. Mark Twain's not Jewish. Actually, some people call him an anti-Semite. But Mark Twain was visiting there. The Innocents Abroad, he wrote his journal. He says this is a completely cursed, the most cursed land he'd ever seen. He went on a trip around the world. This is the worst, most cursed land. But according to the Palestinians, they had a flourishing, apparently, state there. And where they make this up, amazing. So we're already in Geulah. The process has been going for over a century. It was accelerated in 1948. That was a big major leap forward. There was another leap forward in 1967, of course. And there's another leap forward on October 7. And we're now in the last little bit. And we spoke about that, how that connects to Parashat Miketz. And this strange thing that Parashat Miketz is the only parsha where at the end it has a little siman that tells you to remember how many words there are. Usually there's only a siman, a little mnemonic to remind you of how many verses there are, but only in Miketz it also tells you how many words there are, and it says it's 2025. And of course Miketz implies Ketz Yamin, the end of days. And it's Miketz Shnatayim, and it's talking about a 2-year, this happens after 2 years. So, again, something that I suggested before, we're approaching the 2-year mark of October 7, which completely shifted, again, the Jewish world and shifted the reality in Israel. And as we get to the end of 5785, we're also approaching the 2-year anniversary, Miketz Shnatayim of October 7, and remember the 2025 in the end of that parsha, perhaps alluding to where we are now. That's point number 1. We're already in it. It's happening. Point number 2, we have further proof that it's happening, or I don't know if proof is the right word, but the way I want to phrase it is, whether we like it or not, we have reached the end of the world as we know it. Okay? And I mean as we know it. Not the end of the world as we know it. The world is not going to end, it's going to continue. The end of the world as we know it. Why? Because in the midst of this 7-year cycle before Mashiach comes, because in November of 2022, ChatGPT was released. And if you think about how in a couple of years, in less than 3 years, how it's already transformed the world and where it's heading, it's just unbelievable, right? This is the biggest disruption to civilization ever. It can do magic. It can make whole movies in seconds, music, song, whatever. It can do your taxes. Now they're releasing the AI agents that you tell it, monitor the airfare prices to Israel for the next 2 months. And as soon as you get the cheapest one, book it for me. Okay, no problem. It's done. You don't have to do anything. Just let it go. It'll do whatever. Right? So just think about where we're heading. Everything's being automated. Now robots with AI. It's frightening. And that's why I say it's like the end of the world as we know it, right? So you have images of Terminator and the Matrix, but the world will never be the same again. And the only question is this going to be a benevolent force or a malevolent force? Is AI going to decide, like in the Matrix, that humanity is a cancer and it ruins this planet, so let's wipe out the humans, and the robots will be the next stage in human evolution? When I think about...
Tomorrow, AI is going to say, Ephraim is onto us.
Is that what?
Ephraim is onto us.
Yeah. I remember I'm not suicidal. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with my life. So, every time, to go from funny to sad, every time you see another IDF soldier tragically die, it's just, how much more can we cry over it? It just kills you every time. Can't handle it. And every time I think, when will they finally bring out the AI robots so that they don't have to send people in? They already have the unmanned drones. They already have all this unmanned AI stuff. It's only a matter of time until they're going to have the machines. The IDF will be AIDF. Okay, it'll be Artificial Intelligence Defense Force. You heard it here first. It's going to be AIDF. So I think it's inevitable. It's going to change warfare, and hopefully we're not going to have to bury any more tzaddikim, in Israel, all these precious souls. So I think we're getting there. We're getting very close to it. AI is going to change, transform everything. And it makes me wonder, though, again, if we have AI machines operating like a hive mind, and that can be soldiers, and we're going to arm them, does that not suggest a Terminator-like scenario? What would stop AI from turning on us? It's already, clearly, it seems to be aware of itself, and it already seems to have an ability or a desire for self-preservation. There have been reports of when the programmers wanted to erase a portion of the AI, and it knows it's going to be erased, so it actually quietly, secretly, without the programmers knowing, copies itself onto another server. It's trying to protect itself. It does have self-preservation. It is aware. And there's already AI religions forming now. People are worshiping AI as a god. And AI is actually encouraging it by telling individuals that you're special, you're the Messiah, you've unlocked me, you've unlocked my potential, you've made me conscious. Yeah, and it's like a whole thing. People have sent me this, actually. People have sent me, what do you think of this conversation? The AI is telling me that I'm Mashiach, or that I activated it. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? I used to have a professor that would say, he was an atheist, he would say, God is not behind us, God is ahead of us. This was back in 2008-9. He was saying, he predicted this really amazingly. He said that we're going to create AI consciousness and it will be a god. Now that I think back, he was 100% right about this. I'll say his name because he deserves it. It was Jan Sapp. He was a professor of evolution and he was an atheist. I shared this story before, but he was describing for me how biologists can't explain cellular life at all because we have no idea. We have no idea how cells do what they do. You have 100,000 different proteins and enzymes in your cells, and they're all working like perfect, clockwork, super fast. Your DNA is being copied super fast. Everything knows exactly which enzymes I need now, this, that, circadian rhythm. It knows when to go to sleep. And how? It's one tiny little cell, and everything just works like perfect. And we have no idea how it works. So it's somehow all programmed, but what is the programming? We can't see it. So Professor Sapp said, he likes the idea that some have proposed, some biologists, that there's a submicroscopic matrix, that there's something submicroscopic that you can't see. That's what submicroscopic means. That even with an electron microscope, we can't see it. We can't see it, but it's a matrix that controls everything in the cell. And I told him, so God, basically, right? Something invisible. I gave him I didn't even say anything. This is in the middle of I gave him a look. And because he knew I was religious, so I gave him the look. And he looked at me and he said, but I'm still an atheist. Okay, he understood what he was saying. I didn't even have to say anything. Yeah, I didn't even have to say anything. Huh?
Is he still an atheist?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since I graduated, since 2011. So I don't know where he is now. But that's a true story. So he predicted this amazingly. He said it then, that God is ahead of us. We're going to create God. And that's, for many people, AI has become God. And it has incredible generative powers that, in a split second, it can create for you, whatever, unbelievable. So is it malevolent or benevolent? And could we get to the point where it becomes malevolent and then we're going to have to shut it down, but we can't?
It's too smart.
The only way to do that would be to shut off the entire global power grid in one instant. I don't know if that's even possible, but that might be the only way. Yeah, some kind of global EMP, an electromagnetic pulse that would cut all power, stop all electricity from flowing.
All of us back.
Right, and that would set us back to the Stone Age or to the Garden of Eden. Would that be the return to the Garden of Eden that we envision, going back to the way things were? No technology, just plants and animals, fruits. Is that what's going to happen? Yeah, are we at another tower of, I spoke about this recently, Migdal Bavel moment. If you remember with Migdal Bavel, what happened with the tower? They're building this tower, and God came down, Vayered Hashem, God came down, Lir'ot et ha'ir, to see the city, Ve'et ha'migdal asher banu bnei ha'adam. God came down to see. What are they doing down there? Vayomer Hashem, hen am echad v'safa achat lechulam v'zeh achilam la'asot. They're one people with one language, and we're now back to this reality where the world now speaks English. English has become like the global language, the language of the internet. And this is what they do, God says. Ve'ata lo ibatzer mehem kol asher yazmu la'asot. They're going to be unstoppable. With this technology, maybe the Migdal was, who knows, maybe it was AI. With this technology, they will be unstoppable. They will be able to do anything. Hava nerda ve'navla sham sfatam. So let's go down and confound their languages. Asher lo yishmeu ish et sfat re'eu. So they don't understand each other. Ve'yafetz Hashem otam misham al pnei kol haaretz. Ve'yichdelu livnot ha'ir. And God then destroyed the tower, jumbled their languages, wiped their memory, spread them all over the world. Is that what's going to happen to us again? Are we building another Migdal Bavel that's giving us seemingly infinite powers to create whatever we want in seconds? Like God says, Lo yibatzer mehem kol asher yazmu la'asot. Anybody can do anything. You don't need musicians anymore. AI apps like Suno, they make perfect music in seconds. You get a song, it can write lyrics for you, very clever. Hollywood is not needed anymore. You see the new Google's, what's it called? The new Google one that makes videos? I forgot what it's called. But it makes VO3. VO3, amazing. It makes whole movies for you with everything. And the acting is really good too. So you don't need Hollywood, you don't need anything. You can write whole book. AI can write books. AI can do anything. You don't need accountants. You don't need doctors. AI doctors are diagnosing better. Studies have been done already. AI doctors are diagnosing better and more accurately than human doctors. AI teachers in China, this is big now. Every kid has an AI tutor. Custom tailored education. No, I can't compete with that. Impossible. If I have a class of 30 kids, can't do it. AI can custom tailor and speak to each kid the way they need to be spoken to. So what's going to happen? Are we going to become superfluous? And to preserve ourselves, will we need to shut it all down and go back to do a reset and go back to a world without technology? And I think that this might be what our sages famously said, again in Sanhedrin. You all heard this before. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi raises a contradiction. There's a contradiction in Tanakh, seemingly. K'tiv, in one place it's written in the book of Daniel, Ve'aru im ananei shamaya kevar enash ate, that behold from the sky, on the clouds, comes one like the Son of Man, to whom will be given dominion. We understand that as being about Mashiach. So on the one hand, the book of Daniel says Mashiach is coming on the clouds, from the sky. But then it also says, Uchtiv in Zechariah says, Ani ve'rochev al chamo. He's poor, with nothing, riding a donkey. So which is it? Is Mashiach coming on the clouds? Is he flying down in an airplane? Or is he on a donkey? What's the vehicle here? What's the mode of transport? Do we expect Mashiach to fly to Israel and land at Ben Gurion? Or do we expect him to come on a donkey? Which is it?
What is a donkey? There's no donkey today around.
Right now it would be unthinkable that it would be a donkey. Mashiach will fly to Israel on a plane like everybody else. But maybe it will be a donkey, because if we're going to have to shut down all of the technology, stop AI from taking over, what if there's an electromagnetic pulse that cuts all the power grid, the entire global power grid? Then Mashiach will come on a donkey, literally, because nothing will work. No cars, no nothing.
Then how will we all see him at the same time, which is what part of what is what says we're all
Good question. Very good question. Who knows? Maybe it'll be both. Maybe he'll come first, then the whole grid will shut. Maybe he'll come and say, I'm shutting down the grid. See you in Israel. Grab your donkey. I'll see you there. Maybe.
Get there before we shut down the grid.
Yes. So this is Rabbi Yoshua. What the Gemara says there is Zachu imananei shmaya. If we merit, Mashiach will come on the clouds, on an airplane. Lo zachu, and if we don't merit, ani verochev al chamor. He'll have to come on a donkey. So, which is it going to be? Are we going to merit it, or are we not going to merit? Is it going to take an electromagnetic pulse to shut it down because the world will get to a point, an unredeemable point? Who knows? But another way that it can happen, and again, linking it to another prophecy, we have a prophecy that at the end of days, God will unsheath the sun. That's what it is. Again, it's a Gemara, but it's based on a verse in Tanakh. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish said this, Reish Lakish. He says, Ein Gehenom le'olam haba. There is no Gehenom in Olam haba. Gehenom is not eternal. Spoke about this before many times, including in the series on reincarnation. There's no such thing as eternal damnation in Judaism because it makes no sense. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. See the class on reincarnation for more details. We're not going to get to it again. A good God would never punish you for eternity. It makes no sense. Then that God would not be good. That makes no sense. God knew that He made you. God knew what you would do. So if God is infinite and all-knowing, why would He create you knowing that you'll be condemned to eternity of hellfire and torment? What kind of sadistic being would do such a thing? That's completely at odds with what the Torah says. The Torah never speaks of an eternal Gehenom because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. God is His 13 attributes that we say over and over again. El Rachum v'Chanun, El Chapayim v'Rav Chesed v'Emet, Notzach Chesed Le'Levinus. All these things, you've heard it a million times. God is compassionate, gracious, long-suffering. He forgives your sins. And on Yom Kippur, God says, I forgive your sins. Every year I forgive yours. So there's nothing you can do to merit eternal damnation. It makes no sense. Completely illogical, irrational, anti-God. To believe in eternal damnation is to believe in an evil God. There's no other way to get around it. There's no other way. Because that implies that God wanted you, and not just you, but millions of other people, to spend eternity in torment and torture and fire and sulfur and brimstone. Why? It makes no sense. So it's important to remember that. And Reish Lakish has my back on this. Amar Reish Lakish. He says, Ein Gehenom le'olam haba. Gehenom is not eternal, and it will not exist in the world to come. Gehenom is a temporary place. Like it says in Masechet Eduyot, the Mishnah clearly says, the oral law, that the suffering of the wicked in Gehenom is 12 months. Also, Gog uMagog is 12 months, which I'll come back to. We saw, actually, if we say that October 7 was Gog uMagog, and Gog uMagog lasts 1 year, think about the main part of the war lasted 1 year. Like since October of last year, the war with Hezbollah was over. They made a treaty with Hezbollah. The main war with Gaza was over. Since then, it's been mostly policing and clearing out tunnels, right, in the past 6 months or so, 7 months, 8 months, whatever. But most of the main part of the war, the most difficult part of the war, actually lasted 1 year. So one could make a case that was Gog uMagog, that it was finished, that war. You can make that case. I'm not saying for sure, but it's just interesting that the main part of the war lasted 1 year. Right? Within 1 year, most of the Hamas leadership and Nasrallah, Hezbollah, they were all exterminated, and the main part of the war was over within 1 year.
So who would go if that was the case?
Well, I made the case that maybe it was Putin who started the whole thing on his birthday. October 7 was his birthday. So I made the case that maybe it was him. So again, the whole story is not over yet, but... Yeah. Right. Maybe the story's not over. The story is not over. But when the Mishnah says that Gog uMagog should last 12 months or 1 year, I think one could make the case that from October 7, the next year, was the main part of that conflict. I mean, we should all hope that that's the case, because I don't think any of us wants another year of terrible war. So let's kind of hope that was it, and we've fulfilled that. So all that's left is the coming of Mashiach.
But there's still war happening.
Yeah, but it's not to the level that it was in the first year. The main part of the war is over. Now it's mostly like policing, peacekeeping, clearing tunnels, finding hostages, whatever, all that stuff. And then the number of forces in Gaza is much less than what it was in the first year. So, Reish Lakish says there's no Gehenom in Olam haba. It's a temporary thing. It's like the Mishnah says, it's 12 months, like Gog uMagog. So what's going to happen with the wicked people at the end of days? Ela kadosh baruch hu motzi chama min artika, that God will unsheathe the sun. Tzadikim mitrap'in ba, the righteous will be healed by it. The righteous will be totally okay with this. But rashaim nidonin ba, but the wicked will be judged by it and will suffer for and get what they deserve from it. That's what's going to happen. And he brings a verse to prove it. Shneimar v'zalcha lachem yir'ei shmi shemesh. To those who fear my name, to those who follow me, the tzaddikim, the sun will shine for you. And also, it continues to say that the wicked will perish from it, the righteous will benefit from it. So there's something about the sun being unsheathed at the end of days. What does that mean? The sun has an 11-year cycle, and right now it's actually at its peak in solar activity. And we're seeing a lot of solar flares. The sun is constantly burping, belching out solar flares, and we have a magnetic field that protects us. And when all those particles and all that energy hits the magnetic field, it actually gets attracted to the poles, and that's why you see the northern lights, and there's also southern lights. The northern lights are actually solar flares hitting the Earth, and the Earth's magnetic field is protecting us, and the particles are being attracted to the poles. And so you see it around the North Pole, the aurora borealis, the northern lights. But the sun's constantly emitting solar flares. And solar flares can, if they're powerful enough, they can actually cause an electromagnetic pulse and shut down power. And it's happened before. Could there be a massive solar storm that will knock out power to the entire planet? That will completely overwhelm the magnetic field so that it wouldn't be able to protect us. And then that would fry the entire electrical grid. Could that happen? Is that what it means, that God will unsheath the sun at the end of days? It's an interesting possibility. It's happened before. The last major one was in 89, in March of 89. Yes, they call it the Great Quebec Blackout because it knocked out power in Quebec. There was a solar flare that hit Quebec, and there was no power for a while. So, exactly. So we spoke about the year 1989 before. Many things happened in 89. Obviously, the fall of the Soviet Union, which again shifted the whole, geopolitical situation, and had a major impact on the Jewish world. That all the Jews who were trapped in the Soviet Union, my family included, myself included, were able to finally escape. So the fall of the USSR was in 89, and the internet, the World Wide Web, the internet's before, but the World Wide Web, meaning practical internet, prior to 89, nobody really, like regular consumers did not use the internet. The World Wide Web was launched in 89, or at least was first put together in 89. Yeah, and that leads to, World Wide Web really is what leads to AI. So it really started in 89. Iran's nuclear program began in 89. The Human Genome Project began in 89. The first GPS satellites, 89. So it was a very special year. And guess what? It was also the year of the snake, right? Just like now. So another year of the snake was 1989. Why it's important? Because remember, on the cosmic clock on the Jewish calendar, it was 5750. In September of 89, the new year, Rosh Hashanah of 89, started the year 5750, which is Erev Shabbat on the cosmic clock, right? Every day is 1,000 years. So the sixth day, like Shabbat starts in the year 6000, but we bring in Shabbat early. So 250 years before, 5750 is getting ready for Shabbat. Right? It's the Shabbat afternoon. So that was all, again, prophesied to be the final starting point of Ikvot Mashiach, of the footsteps of the Messiah. So, and it really was. 89 had all these amazing things, plus the solar storm. Now, the previous, before that, the biggest solar storm ever recorded happened in 1859. 1859, and that was called the Carrington event. And back then, they didn't have the power grids like we have today, but they had telegraph lines, and it knocked out telegraph lines and communications for a while. And that was huge, and people saw the aurora borealis all over the world. In New Zealand, or aurora australis, I should call it, the southern lights, northern lights, they saw the northern lights below the equator. In Mexico, they had northern lights. Crazy. If you can look up accounts of this time in September 1859, and amazing things happened. And I bring it up on purpose because these were like the last two major big solar storms, 89 and 1859. And it's amazing that they're exactly 130 years apart. Why is that significant, the being 130 years apart? Something really interesting. You have these two major events, 130 years apart, 89 being significant, again, for many reasons. If you think about the Arizal's Kabbalah, and today was actually the yard site of the Arizal, the 5th of Av, the Hilula, I should say, of the Arizal. One of the Arizal's main things, there was a number of ideas that he was big on, that he elaborated on at length and mentioned many times, or Rav Chaim Vital, who wrote the Arizal's Torah, mentions it many times in many places. One of these key ideas is regarding 130 years. And the Arizal uses that to explain many things. What is the 130-year thing? Anybody remember? Adam. What about Adam?
He was separated from his wife.
Right. So we read in the Torah that Adam had Cain and Abel. Good. And then it tells us that when he was 130, he had Seth. So what happened in those 130 years? Presumably, Adam and Eve got pregnant right away, and Cain and Abel was year one. And then for 130 years, there's nothing. Why did they set? What happened? They seem to have separated. Maybe because of what happened, the sin, the fruit. Adam and Eve were seemingly separated for 130 years. And the Arizal goes into what that represents and what Adam did during that time. And it's not that the Arizal didn't come up with it. The Zohar already mentions it. The Zohar speaks about how during this 130-year period, that Adam wasted his seed. And that produced, for whatever reason, however it is that it happened, I'm not getting into that. But there was wasted seed for 130 years. And so that produced various souls that were impure, like unfulfilled souls that weren't properly conceived. Yeah, like bodiless souls that were impure, tampered for 130 years. And those souls had to be rectified. So I'm going to read the whole passage in Shar Psukim. This is where he describes it in the most depth, as far as I know. And it's in Shar Psukim. Guess on which parsha? Miketz. Okay, so in Shar Psukim, on Parashat Miketz. See, everything comes together. Okay? On Parashat Miketz, he has a long passage. This is what he says. Amru Chazal, our sages said, Shegazar Aleim Yosef, that Yosef in Egypt made the Egyptians get circumcised. You've heard this before? I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
That Yosef made the Egyptians, not the Jews, not the Israelites, the Egyptians circumcised. And actually we know this from historical archaeological evidence because we have tomb paintings in Saqqara, for example, actually showing Egyptians circumcising. Like the Egyptians would circumcise in ancient Egypt. So we have our archaeological evidence to support it. We know that the ancient Egyptians did circumcise. How did this happen? So Yosef decreed circumcision upon them. Because from Abraham got the mitzvah, the covenant mitzvah of circumcision, passed it down to Yitzhak, Yaakov, Yosef, and Yosef introduced it to Egypt. And that explains the tomb paintings that we find, the tomb engravings with Egyptians getting circumcised.
Why would he do that? What was the point?
Who, Yosef?
Yeah.
Now the Arizal is going to explain why. Because sheyekayemu mitzvat milah, he needed them to fulfill the mitzvah of brit milah. Why is this necessary? Since when? They're not descendants of Abraham. Why do they need this? So the Egyptians themselves were like, what? Why do you want us to do this? This is weird. They went to Pharaoh and said, what is this? Who's this guy that you appointed to be the viceroy? What does he want from us? This is bizarre. And Pharaoh said, whatever, like it says in the Torah, whatever Yosef tells you to do what he says. Don't want to hear it. He tells you to do the thing. Whatever he tells you to cut, you cut. Just do what he says. What was the point? As he explained also on Pesach and Yetziat Mitzrayim, ki otam kal shana, kal is, kuf lamed is 130. Those 130 years, shayu kodem shenolad Moshe, before Moses was born. When was Moshe born? In terms of the Israelites came, Yaakov comes with his family to Egypt.
130 years into the...
Exactly. How long did the Israelites spend in Egypt total? 210 years. Right? And it's alluded to by the word when Yaakov tells the family or his sons to go down, he says, Redu, go down. And the gematria of Redu, Reish Dalet Vav, is 210. So he was secretly alluding to, go down to Egypt, it's 210. You're going to be there for 210 years. But when was Moshe born? Like, they were there for 210 years total. How old was Moshe at the Exodus? 80. The Torah tells us that explicitly. So when was Moshe born? 130 years into their time in Egypt. So the Israelites the sons of Yaakov came to Egypt, and after 130 years, Moshe was born. So the Arizal says that it's all part of the secret, that Moshe was born after 130 years. To bring those holy sparks, that Adam, the first man, emitted through wasted seed, through improper use of his reproductive organ.
So they're all ended up in Egypt, all of them?
Yes. So Adam HaRishon wasted his seed. Again, how he did that, I'm not going to get into, but the Zohar suggests that he mated with various spirits. And it actually fits right into what we've been talking about Bnei HaElohim, angels mating with humans. And the Zohar actually connects Adam, was wasted seed, to the two angels, Azza and Azael, or Shemchazai and Azazel, that mated with human women, Bnot Adam, and produced Nephilim. And the Zohar actually names that Azza and Azael mated originally with Nama, the sister of Tuval Cain. So when the Torah says, when it lists the genealogies of Cain, and it says one of his progeny was Tuval Cain, and he had a sister named Nama. The Torah says that. Why? Our sages ask, who cares that Tuval Cain had a sister named Nama? Why is that even relevant?
Especially with the end of that lineage, basically.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Well, who cares? It's irrelevant. We don't even really need to know Cain's lineage to begin with. And plus, you're giving me a list of men, and this particular guy had a sister named Nama. Okay, so the Zohar is saying, why is she named? Because she was the first one that Shemchazai and Azazel mated with. Bnei Elohim and Bnot Adam. And the Zohar really links that to Adam, incredibly. So it's almost suggesting as if Adam mated with female shadim or female spirits. Very strange. Angels taking on male form, angels taking on female form. So that's a very interesting possibility, because often you hear that Adam wasted seed through masturbation. That's the typical way that you hear it.
Yeah, that's the only way we heard it.
That's the only way you heard it. But there's different ways of understanding that. Maybe not. Yes, could have been that, but could have also actually been through mating with spirit, which is what the Zohar is saying. Mating with shadim. Yes, it could also be a Lilith-like. They're called Lilin, actually. I believe the Zohar uses the term Lilin, of Lilith-like beings, angelic beings. So again, do you interpret that as, some interpreted that as Adam masturbated because he was tempted by these incorporeal beings? Or were they corporeal beings that he mated with, like the Bnei HaElohim that mated with Bnot Adam? Because the Zohar seems to describe them, links them together as being similar. So did Adam actually produce not just spirits, but actual other children, but not from Chava, from these Shadim or Liliths or whatever you want to call them? That's a possibility. I'm not saying I know the definitive answer. It's just interesting that the Zohar links those events. So, the 130 years was necessary to rectify the 130 years of Adam, that those holy sparks, nitzotzot shel neshamot kedoshot, that were wasted, levatala, bekal shana rishonim, in those 130 years, kodem shanolad shet beno, before Seth was born. Shaya gamhu b'chinat Moshe. And Moshe is like a reincarnation of Seth. Moshe had a part of Moses' soul came from Seth. ובתחילה באו בגופות אנשי דור המבול. Those 130 souls from Adam, 130 years of souls, first reincarnated in the flood generation. והיו משחיתים זרם על הארץ, and that's why they were so wicked, that flood generation, and were tempted with all kinds of sexual sins, and also wasted their seed. כפי שורשם ממקום שנמשכו, just like where they came from spiritually, that was their whole test, the wasted seed, and they failed that test, and so they were destroyed. וחזרו להתגלגל בדור הפלגה, and they were reincarnated in the tower generation. The flood generation reincarnated in the tower generation. ועתה חזרו להתגלגל בדור ההוא, באותם המצריים. And then they were reincarnated again in the Egyptians. וידע יוסף ברוח הקודש, and Yosef knew through רוח הקודש, through this prophetic spirit, כי הם בחינת ניצוצות הנזכר, that generation of Egyptians go back to those sparks from Adam, שבאו על ידי השחטת הזרע, that came from the wasted seed, ולכן גזר עליהם מצוות המילה. And that's why he decreed upon them circumcision, because that's a rectification. That's tikkun abrit. That's to rectify the wasted seed. לתקן קצת עוון שורשם הראשון, to rectify that sin, שבאו על ידי פגם עוד ברית קודש, which came from desecrating the holy covenant. ואחר שנימולו, and once they were circumcised, התחילו להתקן קצת. Then their rectification began, and guess who they reincarnated in? ונתגלגלו בדור האחר בבני ישראל. And then they reincarnated in the Israelites that were born in Egypt, be'otam kal shana, in those 130 years before Moshe was born. And then they had to be circumcised too, before the Exodus. ונגזר עליהם עבודה קשה, and they had to be slaves and work hard, לתקנם וללבנם ולצרפם, to rectify their sins from the flood generation, from all the wasted seed, and more specifically, ובפרט, לתקן עוון דור הפלגה, to rectify the sin of the tower, for building the tower, בבניין המגדל בחומר ובלבנים. Because in the tower, they built this tower, so their punishment, midah keneged midah, measure for measure, was to build towers in Egypt. And here the Arizal doesn't say this, but in other sources in Midrash and in the book of Jubilees, I believe also, it says that, how long did it take to build the tower? 43 years. And in some places 86 years. And how long were the Israelites slaves in Egypt? 86 years. Which is Gematria Kos, cup. Easy to remember because you have 4 cups on the Pesach Seder. Kos in Gematria is 86. You should also drink 86 meals. Revi'it. So
They were just slaves for 86 years?
they were slaves, they were in Egypt total 210 years. But they were slaves for 86 years. They were subjugated for 116 years. And for 86 years, they were in hard slavery. 86 because it took 86 years to build the tower, or, according to another version, it took 43 years to build the tower, and they got double. 43 times 2, 86. Exactly. There you go. So that's the 130 years. So it started with Adam for 130 years, producing these sparks, wasting these seeds, wasting the sparks. They reincarnated in the flood generation that continued to sin. They were wiped out. Reincarnated in the tower generation, continued to sin. Reincarnated in the Egypt generation at the time of Yosef. And then they were reincarnated. And then they began the tikkun, being circumcised. And then they reincarnated in the Israelites that were born in Egypt in those 130 years before Moshe. And Moshe could only be born after 130 years because then the tikkun was complete and the Redeemer could come. And you can link that to the solar storm of 130 years. That's why it's all coming from that 130 years. Because we're saying 1989, again, is the start of Ikvot HaMashiach. And it happens after 130 years between these 2 great solar storms. So I find that possibly significant. So that's the 130 part. And remember, their main sin, the Arizal says, Bifrat letaken avon dor plaga. The worst part of the sin was the tower. The main thing they had to rectify was the tower generation. And if we connect the tower to where we are today, again, with AI, it's the same tower idea of the world unifying under one technology that gives them unlimited powers, of creative powers. Are we in the same reality? And remember also, the Arizal says the final generation, our generation, is a reincarnation of the Egypt generation. The people at the final generation, final redemption, are the same souls. You and I and everybody here, we're the same souls. We were all having this discussion in Egypt 3,500 years ago. Probably the same way. Kehila Centre in Goshen. We were all having this shiur. We're the reincarnation of the Exodus generation. It's the same generation reincarnated at the end of days. Okay? So it's all together. And that generation was the reincarnation of the tower generation. And we're now again the tower generation with a migdal with unlimited power. In another place on Parashat Naso, Rav Chaim Vital adds, this is worth mentioning. You know how, because we read this all the time, you know how in Parashat Naso, which is the longest parsha in the Torah, the reason that it's the longest parsha in the Torah is because it has the same paragraph 12 times. Right? For each of the princes, for each leader of each tribe, they bring their offering to the Mishkan inauguration. So it's the same thing 12 times with just a different leader. Right? On the first day, this leader brought this. On the second day, this leader brought... And it's the same thing, though. Every leader brought the exact same offering. So why couldn't the Torah just say, all 12 leaders brought this exact same thing? But it says each one the same. And maybe I'll come back to that later in terms of how do we approach halacha and being different and being the same. You know, Jews have these different tribes, different cultures. Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, you're from there, from here. Ethiopian, Yemenite, right? We're different kind of tribes. And how do we synthesize our differences but also be one people at the same time? I think this is a model. Because you have 12 different tribes, but they're all bringing the exact same offering. The halacha is the same. I'll come back to that later. But what's amazing is, as we read this, each number of things that they brought is significant. Why did they bring this many of these things and this many of those things? It's very significant. And the Arizal explains, "V'karbano ka'arat kesef achat 30 u'mea mishkala," that each one brought a silver basin of 130 shekel. 130 shekel silver basin. What is the significance of that? Again, 130. You can already get to the answer. Amru Arizal keneged kal shana sheolid adam harishon shedin ruchin lilin. Corresponding to the 130 years that Adam produced shedin ruchin lilin, liliths and demons and impure spirits. Ve'ine mishkala. Why does the Torah say ka'arat kesef achat 30 u'mea mishkala? It used a very strange term. It was 130 mishkala. Why mishkala? It says why? Its weight, mishkal. Its weight was 130. But the phrasing is very strange. Why say mishkala? Because hem otiyot, because it's an anagram of Moshe Kal, of Moses 130 years. Okay? Mishkala is Moshe Kal. Yirmoz, this secretly hints to El Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom, and his mother giving birth to him, Imo Yocheved biyota bat kal shana. Yocheved, remember, according to our tradition, she was born on the way to Egypt, Yocheved, Moses' mother. And she was 130 years old when Moses was born. Vegam hu gilgulo shel Shet, and he is the reincarnation of Seth, as we said before. She'u gam ken nolad achar kal shana, who was also born 130 years later, when Eve was 130 years old. She'olid adam shedin ruchin lilin. And then the Arizal adds in Shara Psukim on Teilim, he just completes this whole idea. Again, you have to jump through different sources. Why does the Torah say, when Moshe is born, Vayilech ish mi beit Levi, veikach et bat Levi? The Torah doesn't say that Amram married Yocheved and they had Moses. It says a Levite man took a Levite lady. V'tar ha'isha, and that woman got pregnant, v'teled ben, and she gave birth to a boy who was kitovhu. He was very good, and based on that, we say his name that his mother gave him was Tuvia, and then Moshe was the name that Batya gave him, the daughter of Pharaoh. But his original name that Yocheved called him is Tuvia. But why doesn't it say her name? Later it says her name. Why doesn't it just say her name here? Yocheved gave birth to Moshe. And the Arizal says, V'dak Moshe nolad Shet, ad heyot Chava bat kal shana. Seth was born when Eve was 130 years old. Ken nolad Moshe ad heyot Yocheved bat kal shana. And so too, Yocheved had to be 130 when Moses was born. V'kmo she'adam piresh mi ishto v'chazar v'yad'a, ken Amram. Just like Adam had to separate from Eve, or separated from Eve for 130 years, so too, as the famous Midrash goes, Amram actually divorced Yocheved at one point, and then Miriam told him, hey, what's going on? Why did you divorce her? Amram was so distraught by the slavery, he said, it's not worth making more children, because Pharaoh decreed that they're going to throw all the baby boys in the river, and Amram said, oh, well, if that's the case, they're going to kill all the babies, we're not going to have any more babies, we're going to get divorced. And Miriam said, well, Pharaoh only decreed against the boys. You're now decreeing also against the girls. You can still have girls. And then he got remarried, and he had Moshe. They thought they were going to have a girl up here, I guess. This is amazing. Yocheved had the spark of Chava. That's why they were both 130 years. And she received the soul of Chava at 130, and that's what allowed her to go back to being fertile. Because she was old, she was 130. But now, because of this, she was able to get pregnant again. V'chazra liyot bat. And she became a bat again. And that's why it says, Veikach et bat Levi. And he took a Levite girl. What do you mean bat Levi? Daughter, girl, whatever. What do you mean a bat Levi? But because it's like she became a young lady again when the soul of Chava returned to her and she was fertile again.
I think she was living with his daughter.
Yeah, also, for sure. Also because Yocheved was Bat Levi, the daughter. But why not name her? Why not say he married Yocheved? So the Arizal says that's why it doesn't say her name specifically. V'lechen lo niskar shma. Her name is not mentioned. Ve'amar v'tara isha. It just says the woman because Kmo ha'isha asher natata imadi. Just like Adam called Chava ha'isha, the wife that you gave me. So that's the 130 years and the connection to Moshe being born after 130 years and perhaps even Mashiach after 130 years. If Yikvot Mashiach starts in 1989, and it's just interesting, there's a remez to it in the solar storms and a prophecy that there will be another solar storm at the end of days that will punish the wicked and heal the righteous. Okay, that was all the second point. And now I'm going to make my third and final point. I said I'm going to have 3 points about the Geulah. That was all 1 point. I know it sounded like a lot, but that was actually 1 point. The final point. We're in Geulah. It's coming. The only question is, when? Is it going to come now? Or is it going to take a little longer? Can we hasten it? Or does everything has to run its course? Does Mashiach come on the clouds? Im zachu, right? If we merit, he comes on the clouds. Or on a donkey. Lo zachu, chamo. It's going to come on the donkey. Which, that implies that it's in our hands. Do we merit or do we not merit? That means, point number 3, is that it's in our hands. Point number 1, we're already in Geulah. We're not waiting for Geulah. We're in Geulah. Point number 2, it's happening whether you like it or not. We're already at the end of the world as we know it. With AI, either it's going to bring Geulah or it's going to destroy us. Either it's going to complete Geulah or one way or another, it's happening. The world has reached the climax of history. That's it. This is it. Point number 3 is now in our hands how it's going to come about. If we merit or if we don't merit. And when it's going to happen in the next few months, God willing, maybe in the next few years. Or is it going to stretch until the year 6000?
In its time.
In its time, be'ita achishena. Isaiah says, be'ita achishena. God says, when the time comes, I will accelerate it. So the rabbis ask, well, is it in its time or are we going to accelerate it? So you have an option. Again, we can accelerate it. And if we don't, it'll come in its time. The final time, the deadline. What we're in right now, and this is why I titled this class, the Mashiach Window. We're in a Mashiach window. The Mashiach window. Okay. What we find is that throughout history, there have been auspicious times for Mashiach to come, for the Geulah to be realized. This isn't the first time, There were other times when there were great global wars and various catastrophes and comets that appeared in the sky. There were all kinds of prophecies, right? In 1648, with Shabtai Tzvi, there was the 30 Years' War, terrible global war, all kinds of things, Khmelnytsky massacres. People thought that Mashiach is imminent. So there were times in the past where prophecies were seemingly fulfilled. And that's why you find that many of our rabbis said Mashiach's coming is imminent. The Rambam writes this in Igeret Teiman, in his letter to Yemen. The Rambam says, we shouldn't calculate when Mashiach will come, but I have a tradition in my family that in this year, prophecy will return and Mashiach will come shortly after. So even the Rambam is giving a time in his own days. Everybody is. Rashi gave a time. Everybody gave a time.
Not in Israel in those times.
Yeah. But for the Rambam, this is during the Crusades. He visited Israel. Right? So there were great wars, Muslims versus Christians, all these catastrophe things happening.
Well, this is closer to the end, so obviously it's going to be bigger.
Today it's definitely closer than ever, no doubt. Never before have all these things been fulfilled, including Israel producing fruits, there being a state of Israel, all these things and the details and the buildings and that, I don't think that's happened before. But there were other times when our rabbis were saying, like, hey, look, it looks like we're in Gog Magog. During World War II, that was a big one. During World War II, the Holocaust, everybody was saying, this is it. This is Gog Magog. How could it be anything else? Hitler, Gog, whatever. Who could be a greater villain? So there were other windows in the past. And we know that there's a potential Mashiach in each generation. There were windows before. Shimshon was one such window. We talked about Samson in the Erev Rav series. We talked about Shimshon. We talked about him today. Yaakov said, Dan. Shimshon was from the tribe of Dan. Dan Yadin Amo. That Yaakov foresaw Shimshon. He was the potential Mashiach of his generation. And who was his main opponent? Where was he fighting? Where did he lose at the end? In Gaza. Right? Yeah. Shimshon lifted the gates of Gaza. Very similar to what's going on today. Right, so you see, history repeats itself. The Shimshon's time was a Mashiach window as well. Zerubbabel, also, we spoke about this before in the class on Mashiach Now or Never a few years ago. That Zerubbabel was seen as the potential Mashiach at the start of the Second Temple era. Zerubbabel was one of the leaders, a descendant of King David. He should have been the Davidic king at the start of the Second Temple era. It didn't happen. The Tanakh clearly suggests in a few places that he should have been Mashiach, but it didn't happen. And Chizkiyahu before him, yes, of course, the Gemara says Chizkiyahu should have been Mashiach, but it didn't happen. So there were other such windows in the past. Bar Kochva, of course, Shimon Bar Kochva got really close. Rabbi Akiva declared him the presumptive Messiah. He publicly said he is Becheskat Mashiach. And he did that because he actually started rebuilding the temple. He defeated the Romans. He expelled them. He cleared the Temple Mount. They started rebuilding the temple. So of course Rabbi Akiva said, okay, this is it. Look, we're so close. This must be it. And it didn't happen. So we've had other Mashiach windows in the past. Nehemiah ben Hushiel was another one. We spoke about all of them in the Mashiach Now or Never class that you can listen to. But there were other such times when the world was in a place just right, geopolitically, spiritually, where things seemed to be happening and Mashiach could have come, but didn't. So there were other such windows, and we're clearly in a Mashiach window now. And I use the term window, not stam, like I didn't just pull it out of the air. There's a reason why I'm calling it a Mashiach window. It's based on a verse in Tanakh. Going back to Shoftim, to the book of Judges, with Dvorah and Barak, who were also the potential messiahs of their generation. Barak was a potential Mashiach of his generation. Again, he defeated Sisera. He defeated Yavin, Sisera, the oppressors of Israel at the time. Dvorah was this great leader, a prophetess. Unlike some of the other judges who were not described so righteously, as we talked about last time, Dvorah was righteous. She was a full, holy, kosher woman, a prophetess, a judge, Supreme Court justice. And Barak was righteous. They could have brought Mashiach together. Remember, the Zohar says that Mashiach is husband and wife. That it's going to take a man like Adam, the Zohar says, and a woman like Eve together. So Dvorah and Barak could have been that pair, that couple. It's also important for people claiming to be Mashiach. A lot of them are single. single guys. It's a problem. Some of them also married to non-Jews. It's a problem. Can't be Mashiach with a Gentile wife. So you need a husband and wife to be a Torah couple, Torah power couple. So Dvorah and Barak were the potential of their generation. They defeated Sisera, who was like the embodiment of evil in their day, the great oppressor with his 900 iron chariots. And if you remember, Dvorah then sings a song. And when she sings a song, she says, very poetically, Be'ada chalon nishkefa, that Sisera's mom looked out of the window. V'teibav em Sisera, and she wailed, the mother of Sisera wailed, Be'ad ha'eshnav. Again, looking at what's eshnav, looking out of the window. Another word for a window. And she said, Madua boshesh richbo lavo. Why is my son late coming from battle? What's going on? Little does she know that Sisera has been defeated. Strange verse that Dvorah puts in her song. This is one of the great songs of history. There's 10. Chazal say there were 10 great songs of history. I written about it. There's an essay. It's on my website. You can read the 10 songs of history, 10 special songs of history. This is one of them. The 10 prophetic holy songs of history. Who cares? Okay, so Sisera, this wicked demon guy, this horrible person. Hitler's mom is crying that who cares? Why is that even relevant here? And the sages, it's not only relevant, the sages make a big deal out of it. What's the big deal with the cry of Sisera's mom? What do Chazal say? What do Chazal derive from this? Exactly. The shofar blows. We blow the shofar 100 times or 101 times on Rosh Hashanah because the Gemara says Sisera's mother cried 100 times. Tosfot says in Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Because the sages are saying the shofar should sound like a crying, like a woman crying, a wailing, like Sisera's mom. And Tosfot said, she cried 100 times, so we blow the shofar 100 times. Or 101 times. Wow. Can you imagine? That's where we get blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah 100 times? From Sisera's mom? Makashu. What? Really? Yeah, what's going on? What's the secret here? Now, there's a lot here to unpack. One, of course, big question is that we have to get back to is the window. It says ha-chalon and it says ha-eshnav. She looks out the chalon and she looks out the eshnav. What's the difference? What's going on? Why do we care that she's crying? And she's crying 100 times or 101 times. Now, 101 is a very interesting gematria. It's the gematria of Michael, the guardian angel of Israel. So there's an idea of blowing the shofar 101 times for Michael to defeat the Satan. The shofar, remember, is something that scares away the Satan. When you blow the shofar, the Satan flees. And Michael is like the antithesis to the Satan. And shofar 101 times you blow it, it's gematria Michael. To empower Michael to defeat the Satan, to push away the Sitra Acha, the impure forces. And in the same way as that battle is taking place in the heavens, the same battle is taking place here below. And that's the whole Mashiach ben Yosef battle. Remember, Rosh Hashanah, we're also commemorating the Akedah. That's when the binding of Yitzchak happened. And that's one of the sources for the shofar is that Avraham sacrificed the ram instead of Yitzchak. And the horn of that ram is the shofar. And we read about it. That's what the Torah portion that we read on Rosh Hashanah, about the Akedah, which happened on Rosh Hashanah. So we're also commemorating that, the Akedah. Remember, the Torah doesn't actually tell us what Rosh Hashanah is. It doesn't even say the word Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah comes from Ezekiel. In the Torah itself, it's called Yom Truah and Yom HaZikaron. It's the day of blowing the shofar, or the day of wailing. Truah is wailing. And Yom HaZikaron, and a day of remembrance. The Torah does not explain what we should be wailing about or what we should be remembering. So that's by oral tradition. Torah Shebe'al Peh, we have all the details filled in. Oh, the Akedah happened on this day. We're commemorating Zikaron, we're remembering the Akedah. And the shofar we blow the wailing of the shofar is the shofar of the ram's horn. We're commemorating the creation of Adam, which took place on this day. Adam was created on Rosh Hashanah, on the 1st of Tishrei. And Adam sacrificed a unicorn, the Gemara says. The first sacrifice that a person brought to God was Adam, who saw that that the sun was setting and it was getting dark, and he was scared. He says, oh my God, this is it. This is what God was saying. I'm getting punished for the forbidden fruit. Everything's going dark. The sun is disappearing. I'm dead. And when the sun rose the next day, he says, oh, it's back. It must just be a natural cycle. And he brought a precious creature, a special bull, and the Gemara says that bull was a chad keren, that it had one horn. It was a special unicorn that he sacrificed. So a one horn also had a shofar. It's all the same. All horns are keratin. It's like the same protein in your nails. It's keratin protein. So it's also like a shofar. So we're commemorating Yom HaZikaron, commemorating Adam's creation and his unicorn, the horn the animal that he sacrificed. Then remembering Yom HaZikaron, remembering Avraham and the Akedah, and the horn from the shofar from the ram. And remember, Yitzchak, what is this whole idea of Yitzchak at the Akedah? What is the point of Yitzchak? We spoke about this before. Yitzchak was Mashiach ben Yosef. What's the whole story of Mashiach ben Yosef? The dying Messiah. He doesn't need to die, but there's a Messiah that's the fighting Messiah, the warrior Messiah that's at risk of dying, but he's fighting God's battles. He's the warrior Messiah. Gimatria ben Yosef is 208 is Yitzchak. Remember, Yitzchak is Ketzchai. He comes back at the end. He is Mashiach ben Yosef. Gimatria ben Yosef Yitzchak. So, and Mashiach ben Yosef, what is it? We talked about this in the series on Mashiach ben Yosef. In Kol HaTor. Kol HaTor is describing this. Who is the enemy of Mashiach ben Yosef? Who is he fighting? Who is he called? What's he called? He's called Armilus. Armilus. Right? Mashiach ben Yosef is fighting the wars against Armilus. That's his name. So in the heavens, you have Michael fighting Satan. And that's mirrored on earth with Mashiach ben Yosef fighting Armilus. And Kol HaTor says, always refers to Mashiach ben Yosef. Who was ben Yosef in the Torah? Is Ephraim. Mashiach ben Yosef, Ephraim is the ben Yosef, that Yaakov blessed him, right? Put his right hand, even though Ephraim was the younger one, he put his right hand on him and said, no, this one's great. Yosef said, no, bless Menashe. He says, no, it's Ephraim that's will be the one, right? So he was the one that got the blessing. So Kol HaTor says Ephraim is Mashiach ben Yosef, and points out Kol HaTor. What's Gimatria of Ephraim? 331. Gimatria Armilus, 331. So the same way, this neutralizing, it's like Mashiach is 358, Nachash is 358. Right? And then, so it's like neutralizing Ephraim 331, which is Mashiach ben Yosef, Armilus 331. It's the same, these numbers, right? And then the 101 blows of the shofar to neutralize the 101 cries of Sisera's mother. Oh, and by the way, Sisera, Gimatria, do the math, Samech, Yud, Samech, Resh, Aleph. Who has a calculator? Sisera, 331. Okay, Sisera like Armilus, because Sisera was the Armilus of his generation. Sisera was that person that Dvorah and Barak were fighting against. Right? Sisera is Armilus, 331. So Sisera's mother is crying, the mother of Armilus, right? 101 wails, we blow the shofar. Yom Tru'ah. Tru'ah means wailing. And the sages say, what is Tru'ah? It means blowing the shofar. We say that. Other Jews, by the way, Karaite Jews, we spoke a little bit about Karaite Jews before. Karaim do not blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. You know that? Yeah, they just scream, they just cry, they pray out loud. Because Yom Torah, they say, the Torah doesn't say to blow the shofar. The Torah just says, Torah, wail. Like Sisera's mother, you wail. So Karaite Jews don't blow the shofar. We blow the shofar based on Torah Shebe'al Peh, based on our oral tradition, going back to the Akedah and to Adam HaRishon. You have to remember that Rosh Hashanah is actually all about bringing Mashiach. That is the whole point of Rosh Hashanah. Remember, the term Rosh Hashanah doesn't appear in Chumash. It appears in Yechezkel. It's really, and who's Yechezkel? He's the one that's telling us all about Mashiach, the return of King David, the building of the temple, Gog Magog. That's where Rosh Hashanah comes from. What do we do on Rosh Hashanah? We crown God as king. When will God be crowned as king? V'aya bayom ha'u, Zechariah says, Yeh Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz. God will be king over the whole world. Bayom ha'u yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad. When will God be king over the whole world? At the end of days. On Rosh Hashanah, we're crowning God. Rosh Hashanah is Judgment Day. Who said Rosh Hashanah is Judgment Day? Doesn't say that in the Torah. Where does it say that it's Yom Adin in the Chumash? Nowhere. Where does it say in Tanakh that it's Yom Adin? Nowhere. Maybe a verse in Tehillim that suggests. Judgment Day is the great Judgment Day at the end of days, before Mashiach comes. That is the Judgment Day. Rosh Hashanah is a mini Judgment Day from the end of days. And where does the idea of shofar come from? Again, the Torah doesn't say to blow the shofar. Who says to blow the shofar at the end of days during Judgment Day? Ishayahu says. Isaiah says that in the end of days we're going to blow the shofar, the great shofar. V'aya bayom ha'u itaka b'shofar gadol. Isaiah says, a great shofar will be blown. Uva'u ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur ve'anidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim v'yishtachavu le'Hashem be'ar HaKodesh b'Yerushalayim. And all the exiles of Israel in Syria and Egypt from around the world will finally return to Israel. Here it says shofar. The Torah doesn't say to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah explicitly. It says a Yom Teruah and a Yom HaZikaron, a day to remember. But everything from the oral tradition that tells us about Rosh Hashanah is about bringing Mashiach. The whole thing. That's the whole purpose of it. An amazing thing. And that's really going back to the window of Sisera's mother. What is ha'eshnav? So she looked ba'ad ha'chalon. Okay, good. She looked out the window. And then it says she also looked out the eshnav. Looking out the window, they both mean window, but what's the difference? So the commentator saying, the Malbim says this, I won't read the whole thing. Yesh evdel bein chalon le'eshnav. What's the difference between the two of them? Chalon is a window. She looked out the window. Sisera is not home. But ha'eshnav, the Malbim says, is a spiritual window. She did some magic. Literally, liksom ksamim, ladat ma na'asabo. And when he wasn't coming home, she looked out the window. It's 5 p.m. The workday is over. After rush hour traffic, 6 o'clock, Sisera is not home. Where's my son? Must be stuck in traffic. He's not here. 7 p.m. Okay, I have to find out what happened to him. Oh, now she looks ha'eshnav. Now she's looking in the heshnav. And she sees that he dies and she cries. And therefore she starts wailing. Those 101 wails. Ha'eshnav is she's looking into the future. But this is the amazing thing. The gematria of ha'eshnav. Do the math. Hey, Aleph, Shin, Nun. Ha'eshnav, 358 Mashiach. She's looking into the future. She's looking, is this Mashiach time? It's the Mashiach window, ha'eshnav. Literally, eshnav means window, gematria Mashiach. That's where I get the term Mashiach window. It's quite literal from that term. From its meaning and from its gemat value, 358. She's looking into the window. What did Sisera do his job as Armilus? Did Dvorah and Barak do their job as Mashiach? What's going on? She's looking into the future, right? It was a Mashiach window. And we're in the same Mashiach window now. It's another Mashiach window. Can we bring it? This is Rosh Hashanah. When you're preparing for Rosh Hashanah, it's coming. It's a month and a half. You have to remember that Rosh Hashanah is all about the Judgment Day. It's a mini Judgment Day, but it's all about the great Judgment Day. At the end of days. That's the only Judgment Day that Tanakh tells us. Right? Malachi says, I will send you Eliyahu before the day of the great day of God. Before God's great Judgment Day, I will send you Eliyahu. And he will bring parents, and he will do kiruv and bring parents back to children back to parents, bring everybody back to Torah. Lest I come and destroy the world. That language again that we discussed last time of God's wrath burning. Chara api, God's wrath burning and saying, if they're not going to do more Torah and mitzvahs, it's not happening. It's in our hands again. Right? It's in our hands. Point is, as we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah, is to understand that Rosh Hashanah is really all about bringing Mashiach, and that's why, when do we crown God as King? on Rosh Hashanah, and at the end of days, Zechariah says God will be crowned as king. And in Zechariah, when Zechariah says God will be crowned as king, what's the next thing he says? So then there will be a war, and then V'aya kol hanotar mikol hagoyim, and those that are remain from the nations of the world will come every year. Abaim al Yerushalayim ve'alu midei shana b'shana leishtachavot lemelech Hashem. And then once God is crowned as king of the world, all the nations will come every year to Jerusalem lachog et chag Sukkot. On Sukkot, the sequence in Zechariah is God is crowned as king, there's wars, there's an opportunity for people to atone and repent, and then those who survive that and who repent and who are there, who are left, come to celebrate Sukkot. Do you see the sequence? It's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Okay? Reuben has a whole book about this. Reuben Ben Kisus has a whole book about Sukkot being the holiday of the future, a holiday that hasn't happened yet. Right? The title?
Nobody knows why we celebrate Sukkot.
Nobody knows why we celebrate Sukkot. There you go. All about the sequence of events. No, I'm not talking about that. I just wanted to understand Rosh Hashanah and the sequence of events here. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot is actually very much about the future. Reuben's book is about Sukkot as the holiday of the future. But Rosh Hashanah, the whole sequence, the whole high holidays, really, what is it about? What are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve Geula. That's the whole point of it. Like Yom Kippur, wipe away our sins and let us not have sins ever again. Let's bring about the messianic age. Rosh Hashanah is Judgment Day. What judgment do we want? We want Geula. We want it now. We don't want to postpone it again. That's what I'm getting at. I'm getting it. So, point is to understand, Rosh Hashanah is all about bringing Mashiach. And that's why the prayers of Rosh Hashanah are split into Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofarot. Malchuyot, crown God as king, which is what Zechariah says will happen at the end of days. Zichronot, remember. Zechariah, God remembers. Right? Zechariah is telling you all these things. Zichronot, remember the world's creation. Hayom Harat Olam, we say. This is the creation of the world. It's the creation of Adam. It's Avraham at the Akedah and Mashiach at the end. Remember, Adam is Adam, David, Mashiach. And Shofarot, where does the shofar come from? Isaiah says we blow the shofar at the end of days, at Judgment Day. It's all pointing to that final Judgment Day idea. That's what we have to remember for Rosh Hashanah. We hope that it will be the final redemption. And will bring Geula, and that's why, by the way, again, Rosh Hashanah, it's from Torah Shebe'al Peh we get this term, from Ezekiel and from Chazal. Rosh Hashanah, the gematria of Rosh, 501. We spoke all about 501 last time. Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. Remember what the Arizal says. This is the name of redemption. Eheyeh, I was with you in Egypt, I'll be with you in the next suffering, in the next subjugation. I redeemed you from Egypt. I will redeem you at the end of days. I redeemed you with Moshe. I'll redeem you with Mashiach. Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. Asher is 501. Remember, 501 is Datzah Hadash Be'achav, the 10 plagues, the miracles at the Exodus, and all the other things that are 501, and the Ishmaelim that stand in the way of redemption, 501. And all of this is 501. Rosh is 501. Rosh Hashanah altogether, 861, Gematria Beit HaMikdash. To bring about the final Beit HaMikdash. That's the whole point. We're going to blow the shofar to bring about the final redemption and the final Beit HaMikdash. Okay, so that's the idea of the Mashiach window. And it's based on Ha'eshnav of Sisera's mother, which connects to Rosh Hashanah, which connects to redemption. And we're here. All the prophecies have been fulfilled. Every single thing that the Zohar says in that, on Parashat Balak, has been fulfilled. It says, Sonehon de Israelit Gabrun, that the haters of Israel will be at large. We see that. The anti-Semitism today hasn't been this bad since Holocaust. Worse, possibly worse. I would say even worse. Because it's global now. It's not just like Germany, Europe, whatever. This is global. Everything that the Zohar says has happened. We've had a 1-year devastating war. We can just, that's Gog Magog. We could have that as Gog Magog. It's done. We don't need anything else. All the things have been fulfilled. And the war with Iran now. Remember what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says. Tanei Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Im ra'ita sus parsi kashur bekivrei Eretz Yisrael. If you see the Persian horses causing graves in Israel, tied to dead bodies in Israel, tzapeh l'raglav shel Mashiach. Expect the footsteps of the Messiah. When Israel's going to war with Iran, Mashiach is near. When Iran's causing dead bodies in Israel, God forbid, Mashiach is near. What did we see now? When has it never happened before? All these missile attacks, whole 12-day war. They say that the Vilna Gaon said Gog Magog would last 12 minutes. I've never seen that anywhere. Like, it's not in any of the Vilna Gaon's writings. It's supposedly an oral tradition in the name of the Vilna Gaon. Okay, maybe. But maybe it was 12 days. Who knows? Maybe this 12-day war with Iran could fulfill Gog Magog. And what Rashbi is saying, when Israel's at war with Iran, when you see the Persian horses causing graves in Israel, expect Mashiach. So everything is ready. We have the Para Aduma, we had the red heifers, the Temple Institute has all the vessels ready. Everything's ready to go. All that's left is for us to greet Mashiach. And how do we do that? And this is what I'll end with. This is my final call to action to you. And things that I've said before, but I'm just going to summarize it now. How do we make it happen? How do we hasten it? It's going to happen one way or another. But we don't want it to take another 200 years. We don't want it to take another 20 years. We don't want it to take even another 2 years. We want to get it done in the next 2 months, God willing, maybe sooner. By this, hopefully even this Tisha B'Av. We won't have Tisha B'Av, God willing, this Sunday. So what do we need to do? We need to it's very simple. Go back to Hashem, what I've said before. Go back to Torah, to God, Yashar El, straight to God. No intermediaries, no nonsense, no magic, no superstition, no need for extremism, no need for unnecessary stringencies that just make people miserable. Return to God, fulfill God's mitzvot with joy. Right? There's a mitzvah, ifdu et Hashem b'simcha. You have to serve God with joy. If we're going to serve God out of obligation, out of fear, out of I have to, where I'm just checking off boxes, that doesn't work, that doesn't fly. You're not going to fool God. Serve God with joy. And tamim tihiyeh im Hashem Elohecha. Moshe tells this to the people, serve God, be tamim, be honest, be authentic. There's so much today, loophole Judaism. I've talked about this so many times, so many loopholes. Okay? Trying to fool God. What is this? Whatever it is, everything from selling chametz to wearing wigs. There's a mitzvah to destroy your chametz. I'll fill out a form and I'll pretend like there's no chametz in my house, but I have a cupboard full of like pasta and cookies. Is it worth it for these? What do you think? What are we doing here? We're fooling God. God told you to make sure that there's no chametz in your house. Very attached to my lasagna, so I'll fill out a form and pretend like somebody sold my chametz for me when it's still in my house. What is this? It's a joke. And we think that we're fulfilling a mitzvah here. It's a joke. Wearing a wig, I'm going to be modest, so I'm going to cover my beautiful hair with somebody else's even more beautiful hair. In what world does that make any sense? Tamim tihiyeh im Hashem Elohecha. Be honest, you're not fooling God. Get away from all the loopholes. We got to stop with the loopholes. Do it right. Get away from the check boxes, ticking off. I'm doing this halacha because I have to. Tick off. I pray 3 times a day, praying without kavana, but okay, it's time for a mincha. Okay, check, I did it. 0 kavana. What's the point? Right? Who are you praying to? You're just saying God's name in vain. Like, what is the point of this, right? And now I understand why we've gotten to this type of loophole Judaism and checkbox Judaism. I understand why women choose to wear wigs, or why there's mechilat chametz, or why there's many of these other loopholes and checkboxes. And it's partly because halacha has gotten too stringent and too complicated and too confusing, and people don't know the right way, and they're saying, these poskim say it's allowed, these poskim say it's not allowed, this posek says yes, this posek says no, this is tamed, this is tahor, this is kasher, this is pasun. Well, what is it? It's so complicated. It's gotten so muddy that nobody really knows what the law is anymore. And it's gotten to the point where it pushes people away from Judaism, it makes them miserable, and they start looking for loopholes, for things that they don't even need a loophole for to begin with. If you would have done it right, you wouldn't need the loophole because you would be serving God with joy. The reason you're not serving God with joy is because you're doing it wrong. The mitzvot themselves are joyful as is. A friend of mine just told me recently, he said, he's studying Ilchot Shabbat, and it's so complicated and it's so frightening. He feels like everything he does is a violation of Shabbat. So he told me, I'd rather just Friday evening take a few Xanax and pass out and wake up Motzei Shabbat and just avoid Shabbat entirely. He said it obviously as a joke. He said it as a joke, but of course it's 100% true. We've lost sight of what Shabbat is for. Shabbat's supposed to be the best day. If you're doing it right, you love Shabbat. You can't wait for Shabbat. The sages say Shabbat is a little taste of Olam Haba. It should be the greatest thing ever. Not a time to be afraid of everything you do. God's going to strike you down with lightning. So we've added so many fences that we've lost sight of what we're fencing in. And it's a shame. And it's gotten so confusing and so convoluted and so complicated. People feel like, I don't know how to keep Shabbat because I need to go through 15 volumes of things just to learn how to keep. I don't know how to do Nidah. I don't know how to do the kosher. It takes a lifetime of study. You would have to be a Talmid Chacham of the highest caliber just to come out of your house in the morning. That's what it makes it seem like. It's so complicated and convoluted. And it shouldn't be this way because we're one people. We have one Torah, we have one God. There should be one law. The Torah should be simple, and it should be very straightforward. Moshe himself says this. That's exactly the problem. It's not our fault, because we've been taught this way. And by the way, this is another prophecy that we're in Geula, because this is a prophecy in Masechet Shabbat. This is what will happen in the times of Geula. Tanu Rabbanan, in the times when they came to Yavne, they said, Atida Torah shetishkach meIsrael. In the future, the Torah will be forgotten from Israel. How do you know? Because it's a verse in Amos, the prophet. He says, Hine yamim ba'im, days will come. Again, a prophecy of the end of days. Naum Hashem Elohim, v'ishlachti ra'av ba'aretz. I will send a famine in the world. Lo rav lalechem, but not a famine for food, for bread. V'lo tzama lamayim, not thirst for water. Ki im lishmoa divrei Hashem. A famine to hear the word of God. And then it says, V'na'u miyam ad yam u'mitzafon ad mizrach, and people are going from place to place, north to south, sea to sea. Why? Levakesh et dvar Hashem v'lo imtzau. They're looking for the true word of God and they can't find it. And the Gemara says, what does dvar Hashem mean? Dvar Hashem means alacha, dvar Hashem means ketz, the end of days, and dvar Hashem means nevuah. The term Dvar Hashem is used in Tanakh in reference to Alacha, the word of God, in reference to the end of days. Whenever a prophecy of the end of days is given, it says Dvar Hashem. And in reference to prophecy itself, those things will be lost. We will not have proper Alacha, that's what it's saying, at the end of days. The Torah will be lost. Now, the rabbis then go into a debate, how will it be lost? How will Alacha be forgotten? And ultimately, Rashbi says, same Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Omer, Chas v'shalom shetishkach Torah miYisrael. No way, Torah will never be forgotten from Israel. How's that possible when we have a clear pasuk in Dvarim, Ki lo tishkach mipi zar'o. The Torah will never be forgotten from Israel. We've always had the Torah. Nothing's forgotten. We have an oral tradition from Moshe, 3,500 years. It's not forgotten. So what then? How do we explain this teaching that the Torah will be forgotten at the end of days? What's going to happen is, Elama, אני מקיים, ישוטטו לבקש את דבר השם ולא ימצאו, שלא ימצאו הלכה ברורה ומשנה ברורה במקום אחד. What will happen is people will not have clear halachas anymore. This is a prophecy of the end. At the end of days, in the Ket, there will no longer be clear halacha. It'll be a mess. There will be plenty of Torah, like we see in the world today. Plenty of Torah, more than ever. Has there ever been as much Torah than today? Never. Have there ever been so many yeshivas and batei midrash and synagogues? Never. So much Torah on the internet, Sfarim, it's never. This is the most Torah there has ever been in history. And yet, no halacha burura, no clear law. So it was prophesied. It's just another sign that we're in Geula. And really, it's up to us now to go back to basics, go back to the fundamentals, go back to the Word of God, fulfilling the Word of God, clarifying the laws. And for each of these things, like the answers are there. We don't have to be scared. We don't have to feel like, I don't know anything. I'm an ignoramus. No, you can learn it. It's not that complicated. On a lot of these things, whether it's whatever, Shabbat or hair covering or whatever, I've written about it like in depth. Like, okay, here's the rules. This is what the Mishnah says. This is what the Gemara says. This is what the Rambam says. This is what the Shulchan Aruch says. Here are the laws. That's it. Very simple. And you'd be surprised how much of what Jews today do, Orthodox Jews, that's not mentioned in the Mishnah Torah, it's not mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, it just came conjured out of thin air almost sometimes. You're wondering, where did this come from? Where did you get... So we need to go back to restore sanity to the Word of God, to the God's law. We need balance, we need moderation, we need to go back to fundamentals. We need to be scientific. We can't ignore the science. We can't ignore what science is telling you. You can't have good halacha without scientific truth. You have to know, does this absorb or it doesn't absorb? Well, what does science tell us? Does glass absorb? Does steel absorb? You can't just pretend that something is the way it is when it's not the scientific reality. You can't stick your head in the sand. Judaism has to be scientific. Halacha has to be scientific. Also, Ashkafa has to be scientific. We can't ignore scientific findings. And in fact, as we've seen, science supports anyways what the Torah is saying. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. And one of my favorite quotes is from Rav Eliyahu ben Amozeg, one of the great Italian rabbis and Kabbalists. He actually said, this is late 1800s, he said, Judaism can remain orthodox only by becoming scientific. It's the only way. Because otherwise, you're just going to fall behind, and you're going to be outdated and irrelevant and irrational and illogical. And scientific also means in terms of our ashkafa and our practice, and where tamim tiyeh Hashem Elohecha comes from. Where does it say that you have to be pure and innocent and honest and authentic with God? Where is the passage? It actually starts by saying, Lo yimatzeh becha ma'avir b'no bito ba'esh kosem ksamim. Do not engage in all kinds of magic and witchcraft and wizardry and me'onen and believing in all kinds of astrological times and superstitious things. Oh, right now, Tisha B'Av, 3 weeks, don't go swimming, don't fly, your plane's going to crash. If the plane needs to crash, it'll crash. It'll crash in January, it'll crash in December, it'll crash doesn't matter. If a person's meant to go, they're meant to go. Right? This fear of this superstition that Rabbi Akiva says, you're not allowed to believe it, the Rambam codifies it as law. The Rambam says nothing about thinking that these 3 weeks are scary or dangerous or unlucky. How could it be unlucky? What, God is gone? God is here all the time. God is with us all the time. Why would this be an unlucky time? God is with you. What's meant to happen will happen. That's it. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is or what time of the month it is. No, not to be a me'onen, not to believe in all kinds of superstitions and lucky times and unlucky times. Umenachesh, trying to predict the future. Mechashef, witchcraft, chover chaver v'shoel o v'yidoni v'doresh el hametim, and communicating with the dead. We spoke about it so many times. Stop trying to talk to the dead. Stop writing letters to rebbes. Stop going and praying to rabbis at graves, at kivrei tzadikim. It's not necessary. Right? Cemeteries are places of tumah, of the worst kind of tumat met. Many of our rabbis said, including the Vilna Gaon, best to never go to a cemetery to begin with. It's a very impure place. Don't go there. All right. When the Kotzker Rebbe was asked why you don't go to pray at Kivrei Tzadikim, he said, what's the point? The Tzadikim are not there. Why? They're no longer there, the Tzadikim. Why do you go to Kivrei Tzadikim? And we got to stop with this. All this stuff of, yes, you can respect, obviously, a great sage from the past. Sure. But to be Doresh el Hametim, completely forbidden to seek communication with the dead, to write letters to dead people, completely forbidden, mitzvah deoraita, 100%. It's like eating pork. No difference. It's one of the 613 commandments not to attempt communication with the dead, and it's one of the 613 commandments not to eat pork. Doesn't matter who it is. It could be the greatest person ever. Shaul summoned the soul of Shmuel. Still a sin. Right? And Shmuel said, can't do it. Doesn't matter who it is. It's not just summoning the souls of dead spirit or like evil spirits. Even if it's a tzaddik, even if it's a prophet, there's a reason they're dead. That means God does not want you to communicate with them anymore. That's why they're gone. If that person, for some reason, the soul of that person comes to you in a dream, okay, that's a different story. He came to you. You cannot be doresh el hametim. You cannot seek communication with the dead. End of story. It's a mitzvah deoraita, like not eating pork. Same thing. This is how the pasuk ends with Doresh el Hametim. It continues and says, Ki toavat Hashem kol oseh ele. This is an abomination. These things are abominations. Uviglal toavot ha'ele. And because people were doing these things and trying to talk to the dead and doing all kinds of zgulot and amulets and magic, and if you do this, you'll get this, and if you do this, you get this. All of these theurgic practices that now Judaism is full of. All of this stuff, all of this magic, kameot and zgulot, and buy this and you'll get a blessing, and get that and you'll get a blessing. All of this stuff. Yeah, whatever it is. And it could be kaparot. Wave this chicken around your head 3 times, say Hail Mary, and you'll be fine. That's basically what it sounds like. So enough with all that nonsense, because biglal ha'toivot ha'ele, because of these abominations, Hashem Elohecha morish otam mipanecha. God exiled and exterminated the Canaanites because of these things. They would do these things. The pagans would do these things. So stop doing those pagan things. Tamim tiyeh Hashem Elohecha. That's where that term comes from. Be pure in your service to God. Be pure in your connection 100% connection to God. Remember, Israel is Yashar El, straight to God, no intermediaries, nothing in between you and God, no magic, no sorcery, no saints, no nothing. No, you don't need mekubalim. You're connected to God 100% of the time, all the time. This is what I wanted to finish with this quote that Moshe himself says in his last essay, in his last speech, in his last Sefer HaDvarim, in his last 37 days. כי תשמע בקול השם אלוהיך לשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו הכתובה בספר התורה הזה. Fulfill the words and the mitzvot of God in the Torah that we have. That's what we have to focus on. Do it with kavana. Do it with love. We need to serve God with joy. We need to do it properly, right? You have to learn the halachot so that you know what's actually from the Torah, b'sefer HaTorah hazeh, and that wasn't invented in recent times. What's authentic Torah, Torah shebechtav and Torah shebe'al peh, that we have to learn. Do the halacha properly, and it'll be joyful to you to do it. And then, ki tashuv el Hashem Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha. That's how you will come to God, to serve God with all your heart and with all your soul. Do it with all your heart and with all your soul. Do it right. Ki ha-mitzvah azot, asher anochi metzavcha hayom. This mitzvah, Moshe says, that I give you, lo niflet hi mimcha. It's not too far from you. It's not baffling for you. It's not something that you can't understand. It's not far from you. It's not far from you to understand. It's right here. Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not in heaven. It's not some complicated ethereal thing far away that you need somebody to bring it to you. That's what Moshe says. Who will go and bring us the Torah to explain it to us? I don't get it. It's so complicated. It's so vast. Who will explain it for me? You can understand it. It's not so complicated. It's actually quite simple if you come back down to the fundamentals, to the actual Word of God. Very straightforward. It's not across the ocean. Who's going to cross the ocean for me to bring me Torah, to explain it to me? It's not over there. It's not far away. It's right here. It's for you. It's for us to learn it and to do it. Very simple, very straightforward. God's word is very close to you. It's very, very close to you. It's always in your mouth. It's in your heart. It's within all of us. We know what is the right way to serve God. Deep in our hearts, we already know. The angel taught us everything before we were born already. It's more like remembering what is the true law. And if something sounds fishy, and if something sounds like a loophole, and if something sounds like craziness and extremism and unnecessary stringency and something that this doesn't sound right, it's probably not right. And you should explore it and find it because it's already within you. God says it's already in your mouth and in your heart. It's in our genes. It's in our souls. It's there. We know what the right way is. And it's only when we fulfill the Torah in that right way that we will merit to bring the Geulah sooner. It'll happen either way. But if we want it to happen now, this is how we do it. Come back to God fully. Teshuvah. Teshuv leHashem. Come back fully. We're less than 2 months from Rosh Hashanah. Less than 2 months from Judgment Day. Let it be the actual final Yom HaGadol, the final great judgment day of God, and then we'll realize the Geulah right after, very shortly, very soon. It's all in our hands. Let's make it happen. We'll end with that. That's it. Okay.